Well, happy Epiphany Day, everyone. Welcome to the party. I hope you didn't spend too much on my present. Oh, you didn't get me a present. Well, that's okay. You still got time. It's a whole season, okay? Well, of course, I'm being a little facetious here. Because we don't do Epiphany, do we? We don't do Epiphany presents or parties. It has not always been that way, however, among Christians. Early in the life of the church, this day, Epiphany Day, was bigger than Christmas. This day represents the end of the Christmas season. I asked Anne and her helpers to leave the reminders of Christmas up through this Sunday because we have not yet wrapped up the story. Today is the day when the wise men bring their gifts to Jesus. And their visit establishes that the birth of Jesus is not about making one group of people superior over another. We do that a lot, don't we? You know, we establish rankings, don't we? This group is better than that group. This team is number 1. And this team number 2, and 3 and 4, and so on. And I guess we will all see tomorrow evening if those rankings are correct or not, right? We do that even with religion. My religion outranks yours. But that is not the purpose of this wise men's story. It is not about making one group of people in history superior over another, but rather it is about opening access to God to all people. All people, for all time. It is about declaring that God's love is universal. And I won't apologize for saying that. God's saving love is for all people. Only Matthew, in his accounting of Jesus' life, tells us about the stargazing wise men kings who came to visit Jesus and his parents sometime after his birth, but sometime before his second birthday. We can only pinpoint the time in that period. We don't know exactly when, and they likely did not arrive while the shepherds were still there, as our manger scene often portrays. We don't know if Jesus was still sleeping in a barn on a bed of hay, or if his parents had found a more suitable place and better bed. A lot of the questions we might have about the particulars of Jesus' birth, Matthew, like his cohort Luke, does not answer for us. What we do know about the visit of the wise men is that the gift-bearing foreigners followed the light of a star as their GPS. Commentator John Holbert summarizes the story of Epiphany for us when he says anyone even remotely connected to a church knows Matthew's dramatic story. A huge star appears somewhere in the Far East, and it leads some foreign magicians to the tiny city of Bethlehem and the baby that has been born there to an unmarried couple. Upon seeing the child, they immediately offer him rich gifts of gold, incense, and myrrh. But since Herod, the king of Judea, that area, has been warned by his own astrologers that a powerful child would be born, he proceeds to have all young male children murdered to be certain that the child will be no threat to him. In addition, the foreign magicians are warned not to trust Herod, who told them he really wanted to worship the child and not kill the child. And in response to the warning, the magicians head home by another route. Herod's terrible plans are foiled. The fact that these wise men have been transformed into kings, and they've become 3, although Matthew doesn't say there was 3 or more, that is due in part at least to this Old Testament passage, Isaiah 60, 1 through 6, that Jim has read for us. Isaiah's words come from a time hundreds of years before anybody had ever heard the name of Jesus or had ever sung about a manger with no crib for a bed, or about we three kings of Orient bearing gifts they traversed afar. What Isaiah's words have in common, though, with the wise men's story, is darkness and light. Isaiah writes to a people who are going through some very dark times, wondering how they were going to make it, searching for answers, feeling overwhelmed by challenges, longing to find the proverbial light at the end of their tunnel. Light. They needed light. Likewise, Jesus' parents and those in the world of their time, same story. Foreboding darkness, confusion and questions and fear that we will not make it through, looking and longing for a light at the end of their tunnel. The wise men are the same. Looking for light, they need light, someone to give them light, understanding, and hope. We need light. We cannot live without light. If by some universally catastrophic occurrence, our sun, that we are so glad to see today, our sun were to be extinguished, do you know how long we would all stay around? A few seconds, maybe. That's how dependent we are upon the light. Our very existence hinges upon it, our physical existence. We need light like we need air to breathe. Every living being needs light. We need light. Our bodies need light, and our spirits need light. The Scriptures direct us to light as being a gift from God that can lift us out of our gloom. Isaiah declares, "Arise, shine, your light has come." It's good news. And in another place, Isaiah says the people who are walking in darkness, they've seen now a great light. And those living in a land of deep darkness, on them light has shined. The psalm writer says, light can chase away our fears. The Lord, he says, is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? And Matthew, the gospel writer, declares good news for his day when he says, for us too, the people who sit in darkness now have seen a great light. I got thinking, as I reflected upon these scriptures, I got thinking about where we need light to shine for us today. Well, at the same time, where can we celebrate that the light has come and it is chasing away the darkness? You know, the picture out there ain't all bad, is it? As sometimes the news wants to tell us. But it ain't all good either. The light has shined upon our world. And some of the dark attitudes and actions and prejudices of the past are being chased away. You know, we used to think, maybe some still do, but most don't. We used to think that the only people who had any gifts for leadership that was worth anything, the only people that we could trust to be leaders were people who looked like me. White and male. I was heartened to see that as new leaders in Washington were being sworn in this week, that for the first time, our Congress, more than 100 of them are women. And more than ever, they represent the racial and cultural diversity of our wonderful country. You know, it used to be that to stand in this place where I stand today, a pulpit, and to preach the good news of Christ, you had to look like me. The church, like the rest of society, was stuck in the darkness of prejudice, but the light has shined. And most of us know now that women are called as preachers and pastors and church leaders, and quite honestly, many times they're much better than the men anyway. The light has shined. The light has come into our community. I think the very fact that we're here together this morning in this room, as God's family, all God's children, right? We're all God's children. The fact that we're here worshiping together and we're going to break bread together in just a few moments, that is evidence of the light shining. You see, for too long, we have stayed in our own corners of darkness and we've thought, oh, well, I'll just take care of me and mine. I don't need to really concern myself with or know anything about or relate to those people down there. We've thought that our differences are more important than those things that we hold in common. Too long, this end of town has been seen as less valuable and left ignored. But today, we stand with pride and gratefully declare, we are South Main. We are all South Main. I don't care where you live in this community, right? We are all South Main. Now, it's not always easy being together, and we still struggle sometimes to understand one another, but you see, God is blessing us for being here. The light is shining. Yes, there's reason to hope. For some of you, the light has come into your life, and you are shining brighter in this new year 2019 than ever before, and we celebrate that good that is happening among us. It ain't all bad out there, but it ain't all good either. I want to share with you this morning my thoughts about some places where I long for the light to come. The light of understanding and hope. The light which will help us feel like we're making some kind of difference. Now, the things I mention are certainly not the only areas of darkness in our world. This is not an exhaustive list. It's just one preacher's take. On any given week around here, we meet folks who are sleeping in a tent or on the concrete floor of an abandoned building or in a shed of the backyard of a burned-out house, or who are paying $50 to $60 a night for a substandard motel room. We meet folks whose physical health hangs by a fragile thread, who have had a recent run-in with law enforcement, or may be trying to evade an outstanding warrant. We meet folks who may be working under-the-table day jobs now and then, but not a steady job with a steady paycheck for months, if not years. We meet folks who are turning tricks on the street, or who are panhandling for a few dollars here or there, or who are supporting themselves through a life of thievery. Now, I have yet to meet anyone who has said to me, who was in that situation, and who has said to me, this is the life I want. This is my goal all along. I'm perfectly happy with this life I'm living. What I have learned over these past 4.5 years as your pastor is that everyone who finds themselves in those kinds of conditions was once somebody's newborn baby. Maybe was once somebody's faithful spouse or good employee. I've learned that in every person I've met in those situations, there's a story to be told. There is a life to value. There is a heart that needs love, to love and be loved. And there are many times hidden gifts and untapped talents. I've also learned that in almost every situation like this, addiction is the underlying cause. At the root of much criminality in our world is addiction. At the root of much family dysfunction, addiction. At the root of poverty and homelessness, in many cases, addiction. At the root of death by traffic accidents, often addiction. At the root of broken marriages, abandoned and neglected children, gang violence, domestic abuse, on and on, at the root is active addiction. Yet, if that be the truth, that addiction stands at the root of so many of our social and family and personal ills, why in the world, and I could put another word besides world in there, are we not pouring the resources of our government and our churches and our nonprofit world and our business community into understanding and fighting addiction? What if instead of shutting down our government over political arguments about a wall, we had leaders who were challenging us to stand up, to wage a fight, to save our children and our parents and our siblings and our friends and our neighborhoods from the darkness of a life controlled by crack or meth or heroin or prescription painkillers or alcohol? Amen. What if we treated addiction like a national security risk? Because it is tearing out the very fabric of everything we hold dear in this great land. Addiction is a complex issue without question. It is a disease with physical and mental and spiritual symptoms. It cannot be cured by a pill or erased by a one-size-fits-all program. And quite honestly, at times I feel that in the face of addiction, we're confronting an overwhelming and insurmountable enemy. But God says to me and to you, do not give up. Do not give up on any one of my children who crosses through these doors, or maybe in the circle of your family or friends. Do not give up on them. Keep on loving them, even if sometimes that love needs to be tough love. My prayer to God is, send us light here at South Main, that in the coming year we'll find ways to further chase away the darkness of addiction in the lives of your precious children. We need light to shine upon addiction. We need light to shine upon our abuse of this marvelous planet, which God has so wonderfully made for us to live upon. Now, I think there's a very dangerous theology at loose among some Christian groups that says God doesn't care what we do to this earth or the living creatures upon it, because God's going to destroy it all in the end anyway. Let me say to you about that theology, it's hogwash, or to put it more strongly, it's bull. The Scripture says that God's given us, you and me, dominion over the earth and her inhabitants. In other words, we're the caretakers. And we are paying a mighty price if we fail in our job. This is another complex issue. I don't pretend to understand all the reasons that are behind global climate change and its effects, but I believe it, and it's happening. Even the scientifically ignorant like me can know that as we consume up the Earth's resources with no regard for replenishing them, that the planet upon which we live is gasping for an ongoing living existence. There are some who theorize that God will save the planet in the end, but he may not save us. I tend to believe God wants salvation to cover all of his creation, but he leaves it up to us if we choose to be a part of that salvation. We need the light of understanding and awareness, insight to shine on the darkness of how we are abusing our world, and what can we do, even if a small thing, to make a difference. Finally, this morning, I believe we need the light to shine on the dark shadows of isolation and loneliness which pervades our world. Isn't it ironic, in a world that has never been more technologically connected, we feel so very alone? You know, we can survive in this world without a lot of things. We can survive with less material things. Many of you have taught me that. If the economy suddenly took a downturn and we had to give up our comforts, we could survive. What we cannot survive, though, is the hollow emptiness of feeling as if we are all alone in this world. So often we hear stories about someone, a young movie star, musician, athlete, someone who by the world standard has it all: career, success,